All right. So the first uh, thought exercise discusses business level strategies, and it asks us to identify the business level strategies of McDonald's Brothers Restaurants and the McDonald's Corporation and explain why. So, yeah.
Yeah, with the business level strategy, I kind of went with that. They went with the integrated cost leadership differentiation,
Hmm.
just because they're pursuing that low cost, that 15-cent burger,
Right.
while being different from everyone else by eliminating the car hops and the dine-in city seating, trying to, differentiate themselves from everybody else.
Right.
Also differentiated themselves with station. I don't remember what they call it. They're just having the burger slide and making things quick and going over and over, and especially when they went in the parking lot and tried to figure out a way to make themselves more efficient by going fast as their
Hmm.
part of their differentiation strategy.
Yeah. And still kind of sticking with the differentiation, they obviously tailor to families and making sure that like everyone in the family's happy. Like whenever they came out with the Happy Meal and continue to stick with the low cost, quick service strategy. Obviously, it's like a quick on the go thing. So, like if you're on a road trip, you're like, oh, I can stop there and I know it's going to get me right back on the road. So I feel like that's a big differentiator because even with some fast food restaurants that you go to, it's not always fast, and they typically are.
Right. Yeah,
I
and then
also think that, go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I also think that part of their differentiation is that they are not necessarily looking to offer a bunch of different things. Like they wanted to be consistent through their location. So, and when it was just the McDonald's brothers and they had tried to experiment with the other couple restaurants and they were trying to sell other things, they're like, no, we don't want to be like everybody else and have a whole big menu. Like we want to do what we're good at, and that's what we want.
Right.
Yep, because that consistency and that standard they're able to incorporate across the board, so they knew what they were getting when you showed up to McDonald's.
Mhm.
Um, and then by the lowering the costs by the integrated costs, they eliminated the car hops, the waiters, the waitresses. So a lot of the labor costs and that came down. The switching to the disposable wrappers, where they don't have to
Right.
worry about utensils, a washer and dryer and all that good stuff with dishes.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah, the only
then,
thing they really have to wash if they still, well, when they, at the time, I feel like they still use trays. So that's pretty much the only thing that they had to worry about aside from keeping the kitchen clean.
yep, probably the trays they used in the kitchen to maneuver around the speedy service system. Yeah.
Right.
Also says on here, and the McDonald's Corporation. Notice that, but I think
Yep.
the
For the
McDonald's
Yeah.
Corporation to some part looked at cost leadership and getting the lower costs. And I think when they tried to introduce that powdered milkshake, that was something, especially in the movie, that wasn't necessarily the best quality product, but focusing on lowering the costs and increasing the profits, that's something they had taken more into account than just the McDonald's brothers.
Right. Yeah.
yep, and
And
then
I would
oops.
say also, sorry, just adding to what you said earlier, Jose, like the disposable wrappers. I mean, that's also kind of a corporation decision there too. Like
Yep.
that completely changed the game whenever they no longer had to, like we just discussed, keep washing things and like having to keep outputting that.
Yep. And with the cost leadership for the corporation, one of the biggest thing was when they moved to the real estate business, right? Because they were trying to figure out how to, or Ray Kroc was trying to figure out how to profit more instead of the 1.4% of the 15-cent burger. So by leasing the land and stuff, they were able to get the profit up, for the revenues and everything.
Right.
Um,
Do we
that's
want to
not-
go to the next one, or y'all have some more for that?
I think we covered big stuff with it.
Okay.
So it's the value chain activities are the next one, and it's within McDonald's value chain, identify the primary activities and support activity and how the firm translates value into margin.
Yeah.
I think the primary activities that I highlighted were operations, distribution, and marketing
Hmm.
as the three that I identified that kind of linked how they were operating.
Right. I mean, it's obviously not like a section in there, but I would add in like their franchises because that is a huge part of their value chain because they have, I think what I now, obviously not at the time the movie was depicting, but they have around like 36,000 or maybe more franchises out there.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah,
that's
I kind of
insane.
classified that one under the marketing for the franchises.
Yeah, I guess.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, for the standardization and the consistency, regardless of where they were located.
Yeah.
But for
Team
operations,
and operations tying together, kind of the operations of having the consistency and having the people in each location, and especially when he started making it the corporation, trying to get people that would do what he wanted them to do, and not just necessarily the local town person that has money to run a place that will do everything different. He was trying to find people that would have the consistent operation scheme that he's looking for.
right, and that's I think what they did with the speedy service system, because they streamlined the kitchen operations. They rehearsed it. They did, they molded the kitchen around how that was going to operate, and that's how they incorporated all their franchises to do so.
Hmm.
And with that, the reducing the menu items, that was a big thing to, for cost as well, because with the limited menu, they weren't going to waste food. Their operations won't be smoother because they knew with the limited items, that's what they were going to order, and it was ready to go under the heat lamp.
Right. And with regards to operations along with franchising, most franchises have this, but they have a franchise agreement, right? So the McDonald's already has it laid out exactly how they want things to go with like wiggle room for the franchisor to kind of, or whatever the word is, you know what I'm saying? The person owning that part of the franchise, they get a little bit of wiggle room with how they want to lay things out, but most of the time it's pretty much the same. So like McDonald's already has their set accomplishments that they want done or goals that they want made.
Yep. And then,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, what about support activities?
For support, I had human resources and finance. The two. I mean, kind of all of them kind of intermingled a little bit, but I think those were two primary impactful ones.
Definitely human resources. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw, they trained and they retained a small number of staff to the, and they trained them to their role. And that was like, hey, you're the grill master here. That's your role. And that's who they trained. And that allowed things to be more efficient.
Yeah.
I think especially during the time of McDonald's goals and speaking in the Balance Corporation, that was definitely the human resources aspect was a huge deal for it to have everybody be consistent. I do think, like, if we look at today, like the management information systems part will play a lot bigger role now with, the digital video boards and the app that you can order online and pick it up almost instantaneously. And but definitely during movie time, I do agree the human resources aspect being a big part of it.
Right. And I will add that the digital portion probably goes back to the cost leadership and whatnot, because now that we have, or now that they have that, it takes down on the need for people up front necessarily. That now they have runners basically, because I feel like most people now that they go into McDonald's with the screen usually use the screen. So it's takes away that one portion of the system.
I think that's because the newer generations don't like to interact
Yeah.
with people.
Yeah, I would not disagree there. I'm more of
Yeah.
a drive-through person.
And I also noticed during the movie, I don't know if y'all noticed it, but when they identified that one strong employee in the speedy service system, they quickly made him a manager, and they're like, I think his name was Fred, and they're like, "What's your name?" And he's like, "Fred," and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're great." And then they had him basically overseeing the operation. And I actually looked him up, and he came out to be one of the CEOs for McDonald's down the road.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And then for finance, as the other support activity, there wasn't much in the movie about their logistics and suppliers, but I'm assuming they had a like a go-to supplier that they were able to negotiate a low cost for them being their customer or whatnot.
Yeah, and probably. Sorry, were you gonna? Did you have more?
No, no, go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, and probably during that time they were still kind of like ironing things out. Like obviously they definitely had somebody, but now they sure definitely have somebody, if not doing it themselves.
Right.
I think just keeping the costs low is one of the most important things now, but also the quality and making sure that things are to their standards still. Even though it's fast food and it's cheap, they still try to maintain a consistent quality with it did ask on this question how the firm translates value into margin. But I think that them offering a good value to their meals and the customer sees the value and quickness that it brings them back. So having that
Mhm.
consistent um, that can consistent delivery of service and food is what's bringing the customers back and increasing that margin because you have those repeat customers and you're making money the more they come back.
Yeah, and I looked up some of their business strategy goals for like the corporation now, and they have three things that they want to attain or accomplish. And it's retain, regain, and convert customers. So they want to retain the customers that they have. They want to regain the customers that they might have lost by improving the quality, like we've talked about, and convert casual customers to being more committed customers, like with coffee and snacks. So all of their products kind of point to those three things.
Yep, I think that was one of their biggest value to margins is the high customer throughput. So be it with that speedy service and the customer getting a quality meal fast, it's a loyal customer that continues to come back because they know what they're going to get every time they come.
Right.
Um, Obviously, reducing the labor costs, as we said earlier, is I think a value to margin area as well. Um, with the biggest finance piece with the franchises is comes back to the real estate, right? And I didn't realize that, and even today that's the same thing they still do with the real estate business with McDonald's. Even today, the land is leased the way it was back then.
Mm. Did you touch
States
on the
though,
technology
sure
part?
that they're
I did not.
if they're in a
No. Okay.
location that going to be
Sorry.
profitable. That's okay.
What did you say? I couldn't hear you. Sorry. It
I
like
was
cut
just
out.
going to say, I think that it still makes sense for them to be the ones purchasing the land because they're the ones that can do a survey of, where would be a good location for us that the normal person in the town may think something, but McDonald's has got the data to back up like this is where it's going to be the best location, where we're going to see the most traffic, and there's
Right.
more intel that they have to know where to put something.
Right. And kind of going back to the technology part, at first it was obviously like a pretty large expense, like developing, sorry, developing all of the program and everything to do with that, and then inputting it in most of their locations, if not all of them. But now it probably has created a very large margin in that use of that. So
Oh,
I just
yeah.
want to add that.
Looking at the last question, it's pretty similar to what we just went over, but it's asking what we think the two most important primary activities are,
Mhm.
and then the most important support activity.
So I think the two most important primary ones were operation and distribution. I think we highlighted those earlier, because without those two, marketing doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Even though, so out of the three that I chose earlier, I did stick with operations, distribution being the two most important.
Yeah.
I think so. I agree with you on that. I think operations by far is the most important, but then distribution, making sure you have what you need where you need it, and it's that goes to the overall, like, we're consistent, we have what you need. We've, besides our ice cream machine being broken all the time, we consistently got what you need.
Yeah.
If they would have kept those original ones from back then, they'd probably still be working.
Yeah, right. Those ones too, selling to them.
Yeah. And I mean, as a third, I also agree that those two are probably the most important. I mean, marketing is obviously important for every business, but like without operations and distribution, it kind of doesn't help much, does it?
Yeah, unless you have one heck of a marketing team, but and then for the support one, I chose human resources, simply because that's usually the foundation, right? Because without your people or your employees, your staff, your team members, nothing's going to happen.
Firm believer,
Yeah.
if your team is happy, if you're running a business and your employees are happy, they're going to be happy to make sure that customer is happy also. And I think human resources is the bottom line in many businesses, and making sure that your people are taken care of.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd echo that human resources is a very important portion of any company, especially this one.
Yeah, and then as far as the value into margin, not to be repetitive, but I think it pretty much coincides with what we discussed already.
Yeah.
The concepts, just transitions over to those as well.
Yeah, I agree. Because I was actually kind of discussing by portion because I had already clicked to that slide. So, I mean, I feel like it is hand in hand.
All kind of ties together. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right.
That
is it.
Yes, sir.
So.
Go ahead and stop recording.